Welcome to Behind the Audition podcast with your host, Curt Hilton. Listen in on interviews with voiceovers, filmmakers, producers, animators, and much more. Curt, a voice actor himself, will give insider tips to the business, talk with guests about how they got into the business, and be sure to stay tuned to the end of the podcast when he challenges his guests with a pop-up audition. Now it's time for Behind the Audition podcast. Here's Curt Hilton.
And welcome back to another episode of Behind the Audition with me, Curt Hilton. Today, I have, if you are in voiceover, you know this individual. If you aren't in voiceover, then you probably wouldn't. But if you are, everybody knows my next guest. I mean, they do commercial, narration, automotive, medical, corporate deals, and also demo production and coaching. I'm just going to bring her on. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, the one, the only, Anne Ganguzza. How are you doing today?
Yay. Hi. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love your show. I love listening to, there's so many different podcasts out there. There's some like mine. There's some like others where they do, they go on there, do trivia. Yeah. We had Mandy Fisher on here. They'd have fun with her and Ryder and all, and Matt and your show. And, you give some great tips to your listeners that I know everybody loves. Everybody that I have on there, we'll talk about your show. And I just think it's great for the community, for what you do, your show does. And I'm just excited to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, it's, as you know, it's a labor of love, right? A podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And especially if you do it for any length of time. So.
Absolutely. What made you want to start the podcast?
Gosh, I am a former teacher and had, been teaching for over 20 years. And actually, when I moved to California, I missed teaching, but I wasn't going to go back into it full time. And so I wanted to kind of, I first started the VO Peeps group because I wanted to have a group and to be able to provide resources. And that kind of evolved into its own little brand. And then ultimately, I said, well, okay, it's getting to be a lot of work. And that was a labor of love as well. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll transition into a podcast because that was back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And there weren't as many people as there are now doing podcasts. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I really want to learn how to podcast and I want to create a podcast. So I'll kind of evolve my group as a resource for for the voiceover community into a podcast. And so I created the VO Boss podcast. And then I couldn't give up my VO Peeps group. So I had actually created such distinct brands that I love them both. And it's just kind of a labor of love for all of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis, which I think is kind of a cool way to work.
Absolutely. I love the networking with it too. Like, when you do the podcast, you get to meet really cool people, pick their brain, and you learn a lot. And I don't know about you. Do you get like burnt out when you do the podcast after a while? Like you get down to the last episode and you're like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And then you get those people that reach out who motivate you to do more. Do you ever get that with your show?
I'll tell you what, I think I've just gotten myself into like a really good cycle. I have an amazing team. And as you know, it's again, labor of love, lots of labor. And I actually have an amazing team that I work with that can help me to get my podcast out, produced and out on social media and that sort of thing. And so it just became like a well-oiled wheel kind of thing. And so I record enough episodes ahead of time so I don't feel stressed. And so I think only in the 7 years that I've been doing VO Boss, I took one 2-month hiatus and came back with a rebrand. And
Wow.
other than that, I'm far enough ahead that I don't feel stressed out about it. But I do know that it is an investment of my time. Actually, the least amount of time is spent talking to the lovely people that I talk to and just actually recording the episode. All of the rest of the time, which takes a whole lot more time, is, the
Mm-hmm.
production and the promoting of it. So for me, the easiest time of the podcast and the most fun is just coming in and getting to know people. You're right. And they just kind of revive you.
Absolutely. And so let's get into the voiceover part here with like your 2024. How's everything going for 2024 for you? Is there some new things out there, some new changes this year that you've noticed that have kind of caught you off guard?
In voiceover, not so much. I think after like the initial past year or two, with the advent of synthetic voices coming on board. And I did an extensive like segment of my podcast just for voice and AI because I wanted to learn. And so I started reaching out to CEOs of synthetic voice companies and AI companies to just see, what I wanted to find out, how were synthetic voices really created, and were these companies, thinking about fair, ethical treatment of the creatives and the actors that are behind it. And so I just started, a quest for my own knowledge and decided to put it into a podcast segment, which it was really an amazing journey for me to talk to these people and really learn about the industry as much as I can, because I think you really need to be educated in order to be able to evolve along with what's happening in our voiceover industry. You've got to be educated with things that come along and disrupt it. And so that was my initial kind of study into figuring out, okay, what is happening? How will it affect our voiceover industry, and how might we evolve? And so for me, that was a good jumping off point of the technological disruptor, which seems to be, kind of making people panicked a little bit. Maybe not even just a little bit, but a lot. And so outside of the evolution of that, which I think, things are now coming together that we needed to have come together, and, understanding of the community, understanding from the AI companies that there needs to be fair and ethical compensation. There cannot be, like, people cannot just steal my voice. And as you know, as a podcaster, right, we've got podcasts out there for, years, and lots of data for people that could potentially take that and use it, without our knowledge. And I think that fact that the industry now, and voice actors are starting to speak out, and we're starting to kind of feel our way through this, I think that's a good thing for the industry. And I think the next thing really that needs to happen is, federal regulations to really, stop the bad actors. And it's funny because when I first heard that term bad actors, I thought, well, yeah, I mean, we all need acting to be a good voice actor. But in reality, right, the corporate companies were out there talking about bad actors, about those companies that were doing deep fakes and all that other things. So I think the initial panic is starting to calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think what's really good is that the community, I hope, is becoming more educated and it is smart about, taking on jobs that may or may not seem like, there could be something funny going on. So I think it's good for all of us anyways to just be aware and to be educated.
Absolutely.
So we can protect our creative properties.
And you're talking about the voices, and so you'll see these platforms, Canva, CapCut, another, the editing. So are these? Do you know? Are these voice actors you hear their voices on these platforms, these apps, and everything? Are these part of a roster that get paid from these apps? Do we know that? I mean, how will we know?
Yeah, so I think the best you can do is, you can obviously reach out to any company. I got over being shy.
That's good, and that's great
I
feedback.
got over being shy, and I'll be completely honest with you, because I was talking to people when I started that endeavor, because I was talking to people outside of my comfort zone and outside of my industry, just trying to create an education. It was scary. I really dug deep, and I did a lot of research on these guests before I interviewed them, because gosh, this is the corporate world. It's been a while since I've been in the corporate world, right? And I mean, that's kind of where I came from, but still, it's like when you're talking to people and you're not familiar with their industry, I dug deep and I researched and made sure that I was prepared to talk intelligently to them. And so it's something that I feel I'm not. I want to speak out. I'm able to speak out, and if I have questions, I ask those questions. And it's as a former teacher, there are no stupid questions, right? There are no stupid questions.
You're like the VO reporter, breaking news and Ganguzza live on the scene. So, how are you taking our voices and how are you using it? I mean, that's what we need.
That's kind of it. I say reach out. I would say that before we started speaking out, right? There's been a lot of development. I mean, honestly, like here, my cell phone, right? How long probably have they been recording our voices and using that for
Social
data.
media. Yeah. Social media.
Yeah,
All our stuff.
absolutely.
Well, they said, right. They have the rights to our stuff on social media.
Mhm.
So, I mean, anybody's voices at any time could be taken. You know, we
Right.
as voice actors, we put our demos out there. I really don't make too many of those anymore. I've kind of got, I felt like it was like a lost cause to, read something, then put it out there for like, this is kind of, it's not getting any traction. Let's stop doing that. But so they could have used that product and
Mhm.
took my voice because on some of these platforms, you hear these voices. You're like, wait a minute, that's the guy from that scary like 2020 or like, like those scary voice guys you hear narrating those shows. It sounded like his voice. I'm like, they took his voice. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it is now of course that people have started to speak up, and we've got some wonderful groups like Nava, going out there and fighting for
Hmm.
legislation and talking to the lawyers. I think at this point now there will be repercussions.
Hmm.
Up to this point, you don't know. Sometimes you can only hope. I mean, and honestly, it's like this with any technology, right? That we're not familiar with and we're kind of scared of. It really is we probably should have like 10 years ago been
Hmm.
thinking about this. However, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. I mean, and even
Hmm.
technologically speaking, right? People working in the AI companies, right? It's just developing and evolving so quickly. It's
Hmm.
almost like it's like you gotta even they can't catch it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden you always have the bad actors, right? You will
Right.
always, no matter
Right.
what you're talking about, whether it's synthetic voices or anything else.
Right.
And I think it's just something you have to educate yourself about and be aware of. So yeah, possibly those voices are, maybe they were paid once.
Hmm.
That's what I found with a lot of companies that I spoke to. They were either volunteers that were off the street, right? That just, got paid once
Hmm.
to donate their voice for research, and then
Hmm.
ultimately ended up being a voice on a roster. But now I don't think you're going to see that as much. And a lot of those companies, I mean, they just popped up. They were like, it's like the .com. Remember, I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
companies would just pop up and then whoop, they wouldn't make it and they'd go out of business. So there was a lot of those AI companies out there, and I think the ones that are out there now that have lasted
Hmm.
um, are the ones that need to be the example, right? Be the
Hmm.
shining example of ethical and AI for good, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That makes sense. And I wonder how many voice actors, if there was you know, s- a payment that was acceptable, do you think would you be
a
open to
one
something?
payment, a
Yeah. No,
one time.
no, no. Like say and we're going to use your voice for this project. You're going to get paid, say it's 20% less because it's already recorded. Do you think we'll get to that maybe one day where like there might be a roster of professional voice actors where
Oh, that have
since,
AI.
yeah, yeah,
Synthetic. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Do you think so? That'd be kind
Yeah,
of cool though. I
I
mean,
do. Here, I mean, you have to think about it instead of like what's being taken away is how can you evolve with it and work with it? Because, I think there'll always be a need for a human
yeah,
voice. There will always be. And
yeah.
and I think that, technology escalates and advances based on well, I don't know, people might disagree with me on this, but I mean, we are in control of the technology theoretically. We don't want the technology to control us, although there has been talk of that happening, right?
Hmm.
But I think again, when we understand the ramifications of maybe technology having a hold on us, then
Hmm.
we will be able to, curb that.
Hmm.
We can only hope. I mean, and,
Right.
and honestly, we're not stopping technology. I mean, having worked in technology for over 20 years, I just am very used to being on the edge, the bleeding
Hmm.
edge of technology, they call it. And just kind of being, evolving along with the unknown and then just seeing how it works out. It all seems to work out in the end. I don't like to think that it's going to be some, you
Scary
know,
thing. Yeah.
scary, yeah, thing. And I think there'll always be a need for a human voice. But why not also say, hey, if if you don't want, my human voice, then here's my synthetic voice. As long as you're going to compensate and pay me fairly and ethically,
Yeah.
I will license that to you, right?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
the control comes back to us.
Yeah. That's
And
very
and
cool.
I have to backtrack because something you said, because you said you didn't see a need for demos. As a demo producer, I would
Yeah.
like to address that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I think, you going on to coaching and being
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. I think as a coach, you should know what's coming in the world of VO, or like what's
Sure,
happening, the
absolutely.
changes and everything. Some things I wrote down I want to go over with you, being a coach, do's and don'ts. And I get this call almost daily now, and I'm okay with it now. Looking for somebody to coach them to be, I want to get into voiceover. How do I do it? And so on my website, on the podcast, I'm actually going to list coaches, because I need to help these people, because I can't do it. I don't have the teaching methods that or actually the not the stress, but the patience. I don't have the patience as I once had one time. You know what I mean? I have
Yeah.
kids, so all my energy goes to kids, with patience
That
on that.
requires a lot of patience.
Yes, absolutely. So some of my questions, like one is, hiring a coach with less than 5 years. Would you recommend it?
You mean less than 5 years experience of
Yes.
coaching?
Yes.
Well, at some point, we all have to gain experience as coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it were me, right, I want to look for the coach that, has experience. It's just I'm going to shop around. Sometimes coaches they don't say, "Oh, I've had 10 years experience," or "I've had, whatever that is." Sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
just don't know. And then
Mm-hmm.
it turns out to be if you kind of vibe with the coach. And I think that you can tell a lot. Any good coach, I think, will offer a consultation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can tell a lot from that consultation as to how you will work together. And I think a coach really needs to kind of showcase kind of who they are at that point and who
Mm-hmm.
they are to work with. I mean, I do a weekly series on YouTube called Teachable Moments. And so anybody and everybody that wants to kind of see my teaching style, they see me, they hear me, they kind of understand who I am. And again, with my VO Boss podcast, I'm out there. People understand who I am. And I think a lot of it is that relationship first.
Mm-hmm.
And then demonstrating that you can teach. Because you're right, there's a lot of people who are wonderful voice actors, but they don't necessarily know how to communicate that
Mm-hmm.
teaching. And having been a former teacher, it is something that I absolutely love. And if you said to me, Anne, what is your vocation in life? It would be to educate, motivate, and inspire. And yes, I love voice acting. Don't get me wrong, I do that. I mean, I still do that full time, but I truly I love to teach. I love to see students grow. And I don't know, it just gives me a sense of joy, which again, I think that's my recipe for here's how I want my day-to-day work day to go. And whatever it is that brings me joy, and teaching brings me joy. So I think when you are shopping for a coach, make sure that you talk with them, you consult with them, and that coach needs to care.
Yeah.
I really believe that coach needs to care about your progress. It's not about their ego. It's not about them making money, you know what I mean, for an hour of their time. It's just not about, it's about really caring about your student and wanting the best for them. And I think that you'll find that if you can talk with them. And yes, of course, I think the more experience that a teacher has, I think it's better, because I have, for me, I mean, I'm just talking me specifically, but my life experience, my teaching experience, my voiceover experience gets ingrained into everything that I
Mm-hmm.
give to my students. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is valuable. I mean, that's why you hire a good demo producer, or they say, maybe don't make your own demo because you don't know what you don't
Right.
know.
Right.
That's part of it. I mean, well, it's not that you couldn't technically put it together. There's lots of very capable people out there that can put music, behind a voice, but it comes from the expertise of somebody who does this, who understands the market, who understands what is needed, or what clients are looking for, and then being able to direct a person to showcase their very best acting in that demo. And then, as I just wanted to point out, like, do you think demos are worth it? For me, there's a space for them, because there's your online storefront, which is your website, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great place to put that demo, because all the people that you're not directly auditioning for, right? I agree that most people want to hear an audition, right? They want to hear your name with their brand.
Mm-hmm.
But before that happens, right? And for the rest of the 23, and a half hours that you're, I don't know, or whatever, the rest of the day, right? When you're not in the booth auditioning, right? It's sitting there as an available demonstration of what
Mm-hmm.
your voice can sound like. So that can prompt someone to ask you for an audition,
Right.
or prompt them to contact you because they like what they heard.
Right.
And sitting on that storefront or given to an agent whose agents still look for demos. They still want your demos, and rosters, casting directors that want, your demos so that they can hand them to clients when you're not available for an audition. So it's kind of like you're available 24/7 with that demo. Versus having to audition, it will take you the time for, to get the audition, to actually do the audition, to deliver the audition. So the times that you're not doing that, it's an available product that you are selling at your storefront.
Absolutely. And no, the one more question about this is, would you invest in a VO conference before investing in a coach? Because, the VO conferences, there's some good opportunities, when you go to a VO conference, maybe if that's something you want to because there's so many different presenters out there. Do you think that'd be a good idea? Because you might be able to meet a good coach while you're there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's a great place. I mean, there's so many reasons to go to a voiceover conference. Number one, this is an isolated profession. We sit in these booths and we talk to ourselves all day. And, to be able to get out with like-minded people who are going through the same journey, maybe not at the same time, but are experiencing and going through trials and tribulations, and people that you can identify with and connect with, in addition to coaches you can meet, sessions you can take, and casting directors you can meet. I think it's a great idea. I don't know if I think, for any coach, you don't have to coach with them a lifetime. You can have, excuse me, a session with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's that time of year. So before the show, this time is flying by. Before I let you get out of here, I like to have some fun with my guests. No, this time has gone by so fast, and I'm so thankful you're here. But we're gonna have some fun with the audition challenge. And I was telling you before the show, I saw a picture of the kitty cat on Instagram, and it is so true. We used to have two dogs. When pets do the cutest things, you're there with the camera. You know what I mean? You're taking some pictures, and the one you had like a professional photographer, taking a picture of the cat. That was so funny. But I sent over a script to you in your chat.
I see that.
And this is for a new product coming out for cats who want to take their own selfies. So let's go back to 1990s, the some fun tones. And I know you can do everything. Or if you want to do it a certain way, you choose, and have fun with this audition.
What are my specs?
Let's go like 1990s, like promo announcer.
Infomercial.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Infomercial. Perfect. See?
Infomercial. Oh my gosh.
All right, we'll do that.
Let's see if I can do it. All right, guys, this is cold. And I just came off choking, but here we go. And I've got my prop. Here's my prop.
Oh, that's awesome.
Introducing the perfect portrait cat selfie stick. Now your feline friends can be the photographers with their very own selfie stick. Just attach it to their paw, watch them strike a pose, and say cheese. It's time for your cat to take the spotlight and capture their own adorable selfies. The perfect portrait cat selfie stick, because every kitty deserves their moment in the limelight. Get ready for cuteness overload.
See, you rocked it. I mean, I would buy one. That was perfect. That was total 1990s, and I'm waiting for the bulb head.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
2:30 in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah, when you can't sleep. This is
so
the ad that will run.
Exactly. I'm 48, and I always say my age. I don't know why I always say my age, but just to show where I'm at. I remember going to bed every night to the Weather Channel. Here's your locals on the 8s. Do. I'd be out. You know what I mean? So yeah.
There's something comforting about that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So before I let you go, being a coach, being a professional voice talent, and helping others, again, so thankful for what you do for the industry. What are some tips to those getting in that are not aware of what's to come in this industry? What are some tips you give to them?
Oh gosh, I'm just gonna say, it's something I tell all of my students. So, we study, for particular, like if you want to be a doctor, you go to school for years. If
Mhm.
you want to be, a doctor or a dentist, you go to school for years. If you want to, you learn how to computer program, you go to school for it, and you
Mhm.
take courses. And, it's something that you need to really dedicate your time to. And it is something that you need to dedicate, practicing and how do I say coaching? I'm a teacher. You
Mhm.
know, coaching, I mean, it really helps
Mhm.
to take because taking the words off the page and reading them pretty, everybody can do that. And guess what? So can a
Mhm.
synthetic voice, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you need to really find the acting behind it. So even like the perfect portrait cat selfie stick, if you'd asked me to be conversational about it, it would be a completely different read, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
that would be the human that's telling you the story. And so
Mhm.
even if you're talking about corporate narration, which I do a lot of, it's one of my specialties, any of the long format narrations where a lot of people think they just need to read it. In reality, no, you need to tell the story. And so to tell the story, you have to know what that story is. So you got to do a
Mhm.
little bit of research, and you have to
Mhm.
be able to create the acting and the reacting, right? So
Mhm.
that can really engage your listener. And that is a lot harder than most people think. It doesn't happen. So if you're out there and somebody's telling you to, you can produce your demo after a couple of sessions, and you don't have that coaching and that foundation behind you of the
Mhm.
acting, um, really think about that. Give yourself some grace because look, there's an 8-hour workday. Have you even spent 8 hours of your life working getting coaching on
Right.
voiceover? And if not, then think about that because in reality that's nothing. I mean, we have 40-hour work weeks, and some of us have,
Mhm.
60-hour work weeks or more,
Mhm.
like me, and I'm sure you. um
Mhm.
it really isn't a lot of time, and so give yourself grace and give yourself that time to really get into working hard and working with a coach that can help you really bring those words off the page. And I
Mhm.
always say bring them to life, and that sounds so
Mhm.
cliche, but in reality, reading a word from left to right and making it sound pretty is completely different
Mhm.
than being the actor that can tell the story. And so that's the one that we engage with, that
Mhm.
it grabs our heart. It's like a great speaker or a great teacher that,
Mhm.
when you listen to them, you're captivated.
Right.
And that's really what you want to be behind the mic. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like the specs, like you're what are the specs? You get those specs on the audition, and last week I got a couple that were very vague, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is this? And you just can't send back to the audition. What's this mean, or what's this do?
right.
I think sometimes
Exactly.
I love I love live sessions. I love it because I can ask more questions.
Sure.
I know there's voice
Well, it's a
actors.
luxury, isn't it?
Yeah,
I love
yes,
it to be direct.
I'm not
Being directed
shy.
is amazing. Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And because sometimes you get these, you're like, this doesn't make any sense because if I, like you just said, if I were to do this, so we're taught by coaches sometimes do one take on a way you think it should sound. Is that kind of risky, you think?
Honestly, I think that, when an audition is sent out, right, with
Hmm.
maybe specs that are generic or, they seem like, oh,
Hmm.
conversational, like you're talking to your best friend. I think a lot of times either the casting director doesn't know necessarily what they want and they're waiting to hear it. And
Hmm.
so they're waiting to hear something unique, right?
Right.
Everybody in the world, the perfect portrait cat selfie stick, saying it like a 90s announcer, right?
Hmm.
If you're a certain age, um,
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard it, right? And so
Hmm.
what happens is we mimic that. But when you get an audition and you're not necessarily sure, even what it's about, number one, I will say, Gangula, I always say, Google it and Google. Yeah, Google it, right?
Yeah.
So the more you can understand the product, the company, and who their demographic is, the more you're going to understand like what they might be looking for.
Hmm.
And then you want to bring your spin to it because the other thing I will always tell my students is that when we meet someone, we only spend the first, minute or so hearing their voice and saying, "Oh, I like that sound," or "I
Hmm.
love that rasp," or "I
Hmm.
love that, what a beautiful baritone." But after that, well, all we care about is what they're saying, right? And
Mhm.
does it pertain to us? And is it something that we can benefit from, really?
Mhm.
Or is it something we're interested in? And so you as a voice actor have to kind of, take that on for the company or for whatever the script is, right? And
Mhm.
so you've got to make that come alive and be engaging and interesting for the person you're talking to. And that means it's not about how pretty you sound. Like nobody cares about that after about a minute because
Mhm.
then you might lull them to sleep if you're not able to tell that story. It's just like, "Hi, I've got a beautiful voice and I'm just going to speak like this for the next."
Right.
That's going to just lull somebody, right? If
Right.
you're not
Right.
telling that story and engaging them,
Mhm.
that's really what you have to do.
Absolutely. Yeah,
That's
I love it.
that's your job. So
Absolutely. Well, before you go, tell everyone how we could get in touch with you, find you on social media, your website, coaching. How can we find you?
absolutely. AnneGanguzza.com, ANNEGANGUZZA.com. And then for anybody that wants to listen to and I cross-reference everywhere, but that's for coaching, demo production, all
Mhm.
that good stuff. My teachable moments stuff is on YouTube. I'm on social media everywhere, so you can probably find me from there. And also, if you want to listen to the VO Boss podcast, it's at voboss.com. If you want to join my online network of VO Peeps, it's vopeeps.com.
I love it. I love it.
And my
Thank you.
cats, by the way,
Oh,
my
yes.
cats. In case you're interested in my cats, I'm on Instagram, my VO Studio cats.
I love
So
it. That is awesome. That is so cool. Thank you so much for taking the time
thank
to
you.
talk to me, come on the show. I hope you had a good time.
I did.
It's just so great to network and meet new people all the time. Good luck on the conferences coming up, and thank you so much, Ann Ganguzza, for being on Behind the Audition
Thank
podcast.
you. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thanks for listening in on Behind the Audition podcast, made possible by Hilton Productions. If you need a male or female voiceover, contact us at hiltonproductions.com. Hilton Productions, let our voices do the selling.